Hi guys, today we're talking about CCM6 percent problems with proportions and equations. So some vocabulary, we need to know that a percent is a ratio that compares a number to 100. VIC number 1, this stands for very important concept number 1. We have a way to set up a proportion using keywords like is and of and the percent symbol. So a proportion is two ratios that are set equal to one another. So your keyword, if you have your is and then a number following it, then that goes in the numerator. If you have the word of and a number following that word, that goes in the denominator. So we say is over of equals, and then your percentage over 100. 100 is always underneath the percentage because it's a ratio that compares any number to 100. So that always kind of stays there. That's why I wrote it in black. It's always going to be there underneath the percent. So we have is over of equals percent over 100. Also, if you're dealing with word problems, you can think about it as part over the whole equals percent over 100. Some steps for using proportions, go ahead and write this down. If you need to pause the video, you can. But the first thing we're always going to do is write the percent over the 100. We're going to write the is number over the of number, substitute a variable for the unknown value, and solve our proportion for the missing value. Let's try a couple of examples. So we're going to set up a proportion here because that's what our directions tell us to do. The first question, 12 is 40% of what number? So I'm going to use my markers here to outline and circle the keywords and the numbers that go with it. 12 is, so that's going to be my is in my proportion. Is over of equals percent over 100, so 12 is my is. My percentage is 40. Remember, your percentage always goes above your 100. Of what number? That's what I'm looking for. I don't know what my of is, so in that of location, I'm going to put an X. Now that we have all of this written down, in a proportion, we're going to solve. To solve a proportion, I'm going to cross multiply. You can use a calculator here. But 12 times 100 is 1200. 40 times x is 40x. To get x by itself, because that's what I want to know my missing value, I just divide both sides by 40 and I figure out that x is equal to 30. So 12 is 40% of the number 30. Okay, next question. 40 is what percent of 5? So 40 is, that's a key word. I'm going to set up my proportion with 40 in the is location. What percent? So I'm looking for my percentage. That percent is always above 100. I don't know what that percentage is, so I'm putting an X there. Of 5. So 5 goes in my of spot. If you take a look at what you have here, 40 over 5. Now 40 is much larger than 5, so I know that my answer is going to be much larger than 100. I'm just going to cross multiply. 40 times 100 is 4,000. 5 times x is 5x. If I divide both sides by 5, I get 800. And that was a percentage. What percent? So my answer is truly 800%. 40 is 800% of the number 5. The last question here, find 60% of 85. Well, I have a percentage. I have of 85. Well, what am I missing? I'm missing my word is. So basically, I don't know my is. Find the is. So remember in our proportion, is over of, my of was 85. My percentage always goes above 100. Okay, in this case, you could use a calculator. I would need to use a calculator here. But I'm going to cross multiply 85 and 60 and x and 100. So 85 times 60 is 5,100. 100 times x is 100x. Divide both sides by 100 and you get 51. So 51 is 60% of 85. All right. So now let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about equations. Here are some steps for using equations. Some people either like equations or they like proportions. They kind of pick a side. So I'm going to show you both ways here and you can choose which one you like best. If you need to pause the video so you can jot these notes down on your paper, please do so. Steps for using equations. First of all, we're going to change all our percents to decimals. We're going to change the word of to a multiplication symbol. And the word is to an equal sign. Substitute a variable for the unknown value. Solve the equation and turn your answer back into a percent if necessary. So it depends on what the question's asking you. If the question's asking you to find a percentage, then you're going to have to turn your answer back into a percent. So once you have this written down, let's try a couple. So here we go. Let's set up our equations. Again, we're going to identify our key words. Is means equals, of means times. What I'm looking for, that's going to be my unknown value. And then I just, remember, turn my percent into a decimal and I fill out my equation. 15 is 25% of what number? When I choose to write my equation, I like to use parentheses to represent multiplication between two values. I did not have to use parentheses here. I could have just written 0.25x when a number and a letter are side by side. That automatically means to multiply. But I like the parentheses. It still means to multiply 0.25 times my variable. But I like it because I think it visually makes you separate the two items. To solve an equation, you use inverse operations. So in this case, the inverse of multiplying is dividing. So I'm going to divide both sides by my decimal. Again, use a calculator if you need a calculator, and you'll find out that x equals 60. So 15 is 25% of 60. I do not need to change this number back into a percent because I'm not looking for a percent. I'm looking for just the number. All right, the second example. What percent, so that's my unknown, of means times 300 means equals 129. So I'm going to set up my equation now. What percent of 300 is 129? Sometimes it's easier to say things out loud and while you're writing them out. As long as you're quietly saying it to yourself if you're in your classroom. That just mentally makes me work through the problem a little bit easier. Again, using inverse operations to solve. Looks like I'm going to get a decimal here. And I do. I get 43 hundredths. Now it's asking what percent. So it looks like I'm going to move the decimal back over to create a percent in my answer. 43% is my answer here. 43% of 300 is 129. Okay, let's try the last one. What is 95% of 40? So it looks like what is the x. I don't know what, so I need to put a variable there. Is means equals. Change your percent to a decimal. Of means times. So here we have x equals 95 hundredths times 40. In this equation, I don't have to use inverse operations like I did in the previous two problems. This equation is very straightforward. You just multiply. When you multiply 95 hundredths times 40, you get 38. X equals 38. That's your final answer. All right. Hopefully you've gotten the hang of this. I'm going to let you solve these problems by yourself. Oops. These are the you try problems. You probably already have them on your worksheet if your teacher printed this out for you. If you don't, just pause the video, copy these problems down, and then I'll write up the answers for you when you're finished. Push play when you're finished and you'll see all the answers. All right, so here we've got your answers. For number 1, we got 72. For number 2, 25%. Number 3 is 42. Number 4, the answer is 5. Number 2, the answer is 50. And for number 3, the answer is 451 and 75 hundredths. I hope you did well. If you missed one or two, just check back with your work and see if you set it up the same way I set it up. I hope you did great, and I'll catch you later on the next video.